and welcome to Housing Colorado webinar, providing effective supportive services for seniors. My name is Reagan Robertson, and I'm the Conference and Event Manager for Housing Colorado. Before we introduce our speaker, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. Joining us on the call today is Jerry Lynn Martinez, Marketing and Communications Manager for CHAFA. Jerry Lynn, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thanks, Reagan. Well, hi. As Reagan said, I'm Jerry Lynn Martinez, Marketing and Communications Manager for the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, or CHAFA, as we are more commonly known. And we are pleased to be Housing Colorado's 2013 presenting sponsor and the sponsor of today's webinar. So for those of you who might not be familiar with CHAFA, we are a statewide authority with a dual-purpose mission of financing affordable housing and small and medium-sized businesses. Just last year, our work generated nearly $1 billion in economic investment back into Colorado, and it also supported over 5,000 jobs. Many of these accomplishments were achieved in partnership with you, the members of Housing Colorado, and for that we say thank you. Providing affordable housing that is safe for our state's most vulnerable residents is important work, and it's work that we can all be proud of. And at CHAFA, we work hard every day to help others outside the industry feel the passion for our collective mission of affordable housing. And so towards that end, I'd like to invite all of you to visit our website, which is www.chafainfo.com, and view some of the videos and customer stories that we've created, which help convey that passion. They really tell the story about the role that affordable housing has in our community. So we invite you to view those resources and share them with your customers and your partners so that we can be one collective voice in support of the industry. And so as I close, I'd just like to thank Housing Colorado for their leadership, for all of the classes and advocacy opportunities and networking opportunities that they convene throughout the year, such as the one this morning. By bringing us together to be a collective voice in support of the industry, they really help shape our industry and thereby help shape our state as well. And so with that, I'll say thank you and enjoy today's session.
Thanks, Jerry Lynn, and thank you, Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, for your support. At this time, I would like to introduce our featured speakers. We do have a few. The first one is Jennifer Covert. Jennifer is the Director of Programs and Evaluation for National Resident Services, which advances the strategy direction of resident services at Mercy Housing. Under her leadership, a process has been established to determine resident service outcome measurement at more than 180 senior, family, and supportive housing properties. In addition, she has led the development and implementation of operational excellence, which are policies and procedures used in resident services across the organization. Jennifer came to Mercy Housing in 2005, and she has 20 years of experience in program design, governance, and outcome measurement. We also have Shane West. Shane is the Regional Vice President of Property Operations for the Mountain Plains region, including Colorado, Arizona, Utah, Iowa, Missouri, and Nebraska. Shane came to Mercy Housing with 15 years of financial management experience in the commercial banking industry. His experience includes structural affordable housing financing, including LIHTC, and double tax-exempt bank qualified for various housing authorities. During this time, he also served as president and treasurer for multiple affordable housing nonprofit entities. We also have Sherry Nolan. Sherry is the area director of operations with Mercy Housing Management Group. She's based in Phoenix, Arizona, and supervises 13 properties. 12 of them are senior 811 and 202 properties. Sherry has 25 years of experience in the affordable housing industry. So at this, we realize it's a very busy time for Jennifer, Shane, and Sherry, and we appreciate your sharing your insights with us today. And then I will let Jennifer, Shane, and Sherry start the presentation. And as a reminder, when you guys are ready for me to advance a slide, just let me know. Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. We appreciate you joining us today. I thought I would tell you a little bit about Mercy, and then Jennifer will kind of start in on our topic. We are actually based in Denver. That's where our corporate headquarters are. We've got about 1,400 employees here, and we have 300 properties across the nation. We're in 17 states. We have about 17,000 units, of which about 1/3 of them are seniors, about 6,000 units. You know, We actually collect data on those seniors. Most of them make about $12,000 annually. And for all of those properties, we have about 75% of them with resident services. So we feel pretty blessed to have kind of a partnership between property management and resident services. We know not everyone is able to do that, so we'll kind of touch on both of that today, between if you have true official resident services or if you're just doing it as a property manager.
Okay, I'll go ahead and advance the slides. Okay, so our topics today include just a very brief overview of the need for senior housing. I kind of feel like we're preaching to the choir here, so we'll just go through that very briefly. And then we'll talk about property management considerations. What things to think about when doing your daily walkthrough? What about electronic monitoring? What about safety? And then we'll talk about essential services for seniors and spend some time on that and what property managers can do in terms of services, or if you have dedicated resident services staff, some more intensive services that may be provided. And then we'll move on to how to assess risk when housing becomes unsafe in those situations where someone's frailty is advancing to the point where independent living may not be appropriate. And then, of course, questions. Advance. Just real quick, Reagan, I sent you a bunch of polling things. Have those been set up in the system, polling questions?
Yes, Jennifer, they have.
Okay. I thought we could take a few minutes to have the participants answer some questions so we can just have an understanding of who's on the line. Could we go with the first question, Reagan, which is, what is your role at your organization? So there are three selections. One is property manager, or sort of on the management side of the asset, and then resident services or other. I believe we probably have some senior leadership and executives and consultants probably on the call as well.
Jennifer, it looks like 95% of people have voted, so it looks like the results are in.
Okay, so I'm not sure, do I do something to see the results?
So we have 10% that are property managers, 20% that are resident services, and 70% that are other.
Okay. Okay. Great. All right. Well, it sounds like there are lots of different roles on the call today. So hopefully, as we go through the presentation, if you have questions, please feel free to ask them. The next poll is, what is the average size of your of the housing that you manage or operate? So please go ahead and take a minute to indicate the average size. Okay, so it looks like most respondents have 50 units or above. That definitely makes a difference when thinking about services and what services can be provided at a property by partnering organizations in the surrounding community, for example, because often they look for scale in what community organizations will come on site to provide various services. Not always, but usually. Okay, thank you. So the third poll question is, where is your senior housing located? So we wanted to have a little bit of an idea of people on the phone, whether your senior housing is located in an urban environment, a rural environment, or a suburban environment.
Okay, so it looks like mostly in the urban areas. Thank you. And again, this can have an impact in terms of the partners or those partnerships and relationships in the surrounding community in terms of referral resources and that type of thing. The next poll question is, how long have you been working with senior housing? Great. It looks like definitely some very seasoned practitioners on the line. That's wonderful. If you have resources as we go through, and maybe during the question and answer periods, if you have resources or comments, definitely would love to hear what you have to say about this topic. The next poll question, do you have resident services currently at your property? So yes, provided by a dedicated resident services staff. Yes, but provided by volunteers and third-party organizations, and you do not have a dedicated resident service staff. Or no, and the property manager fills in just as much as possible. Okay, so looks like about 3/4 have dedicated resident service staff, or 2/3 and 1/3 have the property manager filling in that role. So in this presentation, we'll talk about both. We definitely put a little bit more emphasis on the property manager filling in the role, but we definitely have resources available for the dedicated resident service staff as well. And then the last poll question, what population lives in your housing? Active seniors, frail seniors, younger disabled, or are you are you mostly working with seniors who are aging in place in a family or supportive housing community? Okay, so pretty even split between active, frail, and seniors aging in place in family or supportive housing. So this has an impact on how services are delivered, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in our presentation. So Reagan, if you can go back to the PowerPoint, please. So the need for senior housing, and again, I think everyone on the call, it's definitely preaching to the choir, but as you know, older adults are comprising an ever-increasing proportion of the population, and healthcare costs are rising dramatically. And so these two things, at least in how Mercy Housing approaches resident services and senior housing, are very linked. Many older adults want to remain independent as long as possible, and so the service models that we've put in place at Mercy Housing try to focus on health really most intensively because of the increasing frailty that occurs in trying to help older adults remain in their homes. So what we'll share today are some very basic services and tools to help seniors with independently. If you please advance the slide, Reagan. Okay, Sherry.
Good morning, everybody. This is Sherry. I would like to talk about the property management considerations that we should consider when it comes to our senior safety, sorry. One of these areas is emergency contacts. It's important to have these contacts for each of our residents to make sure that they're annually updated. The simplest way to obtain this information is to have a place provided on the lease and ask for the applicant's emergency contact name and number. There is also a required HUD form that is filled out by the prospective at the time of your initial application process. This is the HUD Supplement Contract Information Form, and it is used on all HUD-assisted properties. This allows the resident to name an emergency contact person, check with the appropriate reason for that contact, and this form can be located on the HUD website. Another consideration is in looking at your seniors who would possibly need help out of the building. And when managing housing for seniors, you need to consider who may need that help getting out in case of an emergency. You can design a form that you could keep in a binder or your property information book, and it would list all your residents that have special needs and need assistance getting out of their units in case of an emergency. The form created would have a building number or a unit number, resident's name, phone number, along with special need, their special need. This would be beneficial to your staff as well as emergency personnel to assist those residents with special needs that need help to be removed from their homes in situations of fire, flood, or so forth in a very timely manner. Now let's move on to trip hazards, and these are especially important to address when where seniors are concerned. These should be checked and noted daily by maintenance staff or property managers when they're doing their daily property checks. They can also be checked when your maintenance staff performs monthly safety inspections. They can check for trip hazards on the property, common areas, the office areas. You can also check during when you perform your quarterly unit inspections. You can check then for the interior trip hazards of the residents' units. Residents are always encouraged, of course, to report trip hazards immediately to the office, and trip hazards, once identified, should be repaired immediately. Now we can briefly discuss designated smoking areas. HUD is encouraging property managers of HUD-assisted properties to implement smoke-free housing policies. Exposure to direct or secondhand smoke has been proven to cause adverse health outcomes such as asthma and other respiratory illnesses. Setting up a designated smoking area can be an easier task than you might think and fairly inexpensive. It is, however, important to follow the HUD guidelines for setting up a designated smoking area to ensure that you're not violating any of the fair housing or civil rights requirements. And those policies can be also found in the HUD website. On one of the properties, we did set this up, and we began with holding a resident meeting to address the plan and the location of the designated smoking area. We then sent out a memo with the plan and the location as a follow-up to that meeting. The supplies that we needed were minimal. We needed signs, which were no smoking signs and the designated smoking signs, smoking urn or ashtray, and then possible benches or chairs in that location if needed. After you've been able to complete this, you'll need to update your house rules and policies to include the new policy. I would give your residents a 60-day notice to implement the new modification of the HUD rules, or the house rules. By giving your residents 60 days instead of the 30 days, this will include the requirement of the 60-day notice to all newer residents who are still on their initial leases. Now let me touch on what I think is an excellent program that creates teamwork with our residents and property management with resident safety in mind. This is called the Good Neighbor Safety Monitoring. While safety is so essential, it can be challenging to balance the safety needs of our older adults with their desire for independence. We have to find ways to link independence with security. One of the smartest steps towards safety is to foster teamwork. Anyone who has managed a senior property for any length of time has had that unfortunate news of a resident who's fallen or been able to get out of their bathtub, and they've been there for 24 hours or longer before anyone noticed or they were able to get help. Sometimes it's even been a death of a resident that's gone unnoticed for some days. This Good Neighbor program is an excellent resource to have implemented on your senior properties to help address these issues. This program that is led by your residents, it helps you to monitor the safety of residents in your community. This will be discussed more in detail later in the presentation. Advance the slide, please.
Okay, this is Jennifer again. So how Mercy Housing frames service-enriched senior housing is that our overall goal is to reduce the risk for hospitalization and to promote independent living. And so within that goal, we have a couple of objectives. One is to identify risk factors around hospitalization or loss of independence, and then the other is to implement some sort of plan that addresses risk factors and or promotes aging in place. And so, again, the services that Mercy Housing provides primarily are through dedicated resident services staff. So for this presentation, I really tried to work to say what could be done with property management staff without a resident services staff dedicated to those services, and then talk a little bit about service-enriched senior housing in properties with a dedicated resident service staff. So the focus on risk factors and identifying hospitalization and service plans, those things are very much, at least at Mercy, geared towards properties that have that dedicated resident service staff, just in terms of training and time. However, there are definitely services and plans that can be put in place by property management staff that are independent of that. So please address the slide. Sherry will start talking about services for seniors provided by property management staff. Now these, of course, could be provided by the resident services staff, but we really pulled them out as things that are a little bit less intensive but still can be impactful and supportive to the residents in the community. Go ahead, Sherry.
Okay, thank you. So when you're implementing resident services for the first time in a property, I suggest that you would start by setting up a resident meeting and have this as one of the topics to discuss. I would also create a survey to pass out to each one of your residents at the meeting to find out what their needs and interests happen to be. In the survey, I'd also make sure you include a place for potential volunteers for different activities. You'll be surprised at the leadership that you'll find within your community. I would also attach that same survey to your monthly newsletter, so you've given all your residents an opportunity to respond to that. Once you've received the surveys back, then you'll be able to determine the needs of your residents and the areas of their interest. Just like for a social activity, you wouldn't want to start up an art class and wonder why no one showed up if they didn't have the interest for that. The best success at this will be setting up a service in the beginning to center on the needs of your residents and what they have requested. Starting up some services on your property for the first time will involves some time on your part in the beginning, such as holding the initial meetings, gathering information, coordinating volunteers for activities, contacting outside vendors for health and wellness events, education classes, and setting up resident volunteers for activities like the social events. Once you've spent that time, though, everything you up until that point, you'll be surprised on how effortlessly it'll run after that with little or no time on your part. It'll also be one of the most rewarding parts of your job to see your property come to life and your residents thriving and happy. With the health and wellness, we found several outside agencies that will set up educational meetings on health and wellness for the residents. Area on Aging is a very good agency, and they will come out to your property several times a year, and they help seniors age in place by addressing topics such as the Vial of Life, where seniors are encouraged to complete a form that they keep in a place where first responders can readily have access to that in case of an emergency. On the form, the residents list their current medications and their medical history. Another agency that has been able to come out to our property is the hospice agencies in the Valley, and they'll lead several classes for your residents as well. Hospice can provide and assist residents with the 5 wishes form. This is a living will of sorts that the residents can have their wishes fulfilled as they're nearing the end of life, letting their family and doctors know how they want to be treated, what medical treatment they do or do not want, how comfortable they want to be, and anything they'd want to let their family know in case they could not. Several agencies like Area on Aging can help set up visiting nurses to come out to your property to perform blood pressure checks, hearing, vision tests. And then we've also found other agencies like Arizona Health Net and even insurance agencies and our local food banks. I mean, the insurance companies will come out and do blood pressure checks and hearing and vision tests also. The local food banks that we found are happy to come out and perform cooking demos on healthy foods, and Arizona Health Net will help seniors learn what type of diets that that can advance their health. They also teach seniors what to look for if they're experiencing a stroke, first signs of heart attacks, and how to avoid falling and other health issues. We've been able to find instructors that will donate their time by having yoga classes for seniors. And during the spring and fall times when it's really nice outside, you can encourage your residents to even start a walking club. Advance the slide, please. One of the things that we were able to see that there was a need for was food pantries and areas, resources that were beyond the food stamp program. And these are fairly easy also to get started for your residents. On the our property management researched and found several agencies that would help and assist our residents with food outside of the state assisted food stamp program. One of these major companies was St. Mary's Food Bank Alliance, and this is a national food bank, and it provides the following services for many more of the seniors and persons with disabilities. Sometimes income restrictions may apply for some of these services. One of them is a brown bag program, and we have implemented this on several of our properties. This agency will provide staples such as rice, bread, fruits, vegetables, and they do this at weekly, and it's a minimal cost to the residents of $2 per week. Other local food banks in the area will provide emergency food boxes at no charge to the residents, which include staples, canned vegetables, and meats. One of the most successful events that we have for our residents, or what we found, is the food pantry program, and this is also through St. Mary's Food Bank. Our property in Avondale, Arizona started out with 2 large pallets of fresh food that was delivered to the property. In less than a year now, we received 200 pallets of fresh foods, and we service not only our residents of the Avondale community, but also the residents that live in the community surrounding our property. Monthly, we're able to supply fresh food for over 300 residents of Avondale, the seniors at our property, and also 4 of our special needs properties. This has been so successful that we've now started it at other properties we have in Arizona. The restrictions on this is on the property, not the resident. The properties must be not-for-profit and subsidized. St. Mary's will also provide senior properties with and that house our seniors and special needs people with daily meals. And this you'll need to call directly to St. Mary's Food Bank, and they will give you the information on how to set this up for your properties. Advance the slide, please.
So Sherry has talked a lot about, and she's been very successful, as you can tell, with getting a lot of outside agencies involved. But I wanted to talk a little bit about volunteers, and sometimes I think we forget about how successful volunteers can do, and how successful those kind of programs can be. So volunteers can help us run things like bingo and book clubs and coffee hours and painting lessons. Those are small things that we can start with that really help unify your property and your seniors. A craft day where everyone gets together around a table and we just, we paint pumpkins at Halloween, or we paint a Christmas tree at Christmas. So just small things that get us started really will help unify your property. And of course, we all know about when people cannot pay the rent, helping whether it's resident services or the property manager, referring them to other organizations to help them stay there. If you could advance the slide, please. And the other thing that I would just caution everyone is to be sure that you start slow, because we have found that once we've started a program and it becomes kind of expected by all of our residents, it's very hard to take that program away. Even if there's just one person that loves it, once that program has been implemented, it probably will remain in place. The other caution that I would have is making sure that it's fair to all of our residents. And obviously, a lot of times properties don't have the resources to have a full-time resident services on site, and so as much as we can partner with third-party vendors, we like to do that because it just really helps the bottom line from the financial perspective. If you could advance the slide, please.
Okay, so in terms of the basic services for seniors that may be provided at, by property managers, and if there's no dedicated resident services staff, are listed here on the left, just some ideas that Sherry and Shane have talked about. Some additional services that dedicated resident services staff may begin to implement, again, are pretty focused on that health arena. A health interview at move-in looks at access to health care resources and interest in terms of education. There's a risk and resiliency review, which is what Mercy Housing is developing for a layperson guide around risk factors for hospitalization. We're piloting that in 3 states right now with the intention of taking it nationally once we get the information from the pilots back. There's also a survey regarding health access and healthy living. ADL, IADL review, what that is a review of activities of daily living, and it's basically a marker used to gauge the level of frailty somebody may be living in and what types of community supports need to be put in place for the person to stay living independently. All the senior properties at Mercy Housing with dedicated resident service staff do that review with the seniors. Also, health benefits and financial benefits acquisition. That acquisition can be time-consuming and complex, so often resident service staff will help people through those processes. Another one of the services that are provided are a hospital transition plan, and that's for either a planned or an unplanned transition. So resident service staff will contact the hospital if a resident has been hospitalized and offer this service. If the resident is interested, they sign a release of information saying that the resident service staff can get involved and talk with, say, the hospital discharge planner. And that hospital transition plan covers everything from transportation back to the property to transportation to medical appointments, acquiring medication, food, if sometimes if the hospital or skilled nursing stay has been a long one, maybe the person may not have food resources, pets, all kinds of things, fairly comprehensive. And then voter education and technology literacy are 2 other areas that the resident service staff can work with residents on. So the 2 of these in the resident service column that I think are a good place to start would be the health interview at move-in, which again looks at health access issues, health, dental, and then health education interests, and the hospital transition plan, because at the time when somebody is transitioning home from the hospital is a time of increased just health risk, and so if the resident services staff can work with the community and get the community supports in place, it may help somebody live safely, independently longer. Advance the slide, please.
So the big thing with, from my perspective, is that property management and resident service staff meet weekly so that they can coordinate their activities. A lot of times we all have the same interest in mind, which is helping our residents, but unless we have that communication, especially if they're operated by different parties, whether they be third parties or whether they be people that are employed by your organization, unless we kind of coordinate those activities together, we have found a lot of times we're stepping on each other's toes. We're trying to do the same thing, but we may not be doing it together. So we actually ask our both teams to meet weekly. We have an agenda that they go through. We talk about residents and their needs and really try to coordinate all of our efforts together. And we found that's much more successful than doing it independently. If you could advance the slide, please. So to that end, we've actually created a document called a delineation of duties, and it goes through property management's responsibilities, resident services responsibilities, and shared responsibilities. And as we've discussed this as an organization, there's a lot of opinions on who does what, but having this document kind of helps everyone stay on the same page. And so a couple examples: pest infestation. You wouldn't think necessarily that has to do with resident services. That's more of a property management field. But if your resident will not allow you to come in to spray for pests, then it's almost impossible to do that. And so the resident services has been very effective at creating that unity and that understanding for why we need to spray. Lease violations clearly involve both parties. Housekeeping. Again, we actually do inspections of the units, and we actually include resident services on that so that they are aware when the resident comes back later as to why we ask for certain actions to take place. So it really is a shared duty. Advance the slide, please.
So I already spoke to this a little bit earlier, so I'll be brief. But the health interview and transition plan, I think, are two good places to start in terms of helping support seniors age in place. And the Good Neighbor Monitoring Program, which Shane will talk about briefly, is another resource in order to identify people who may have some health issue happening. And then again, properties with dedicated services staff can also assess activities of daily living and hospitalization, which I think are for intensive risk screening. Please advance the slide.
So for many of our properties that are senior properties, we have a pull cord system in place. The concern with the pull cord system is that a lot of times that's in the bathroom and maybe in the kitchen area or bedroom. And the concern with really that system is that if somebody falls or they need help, it's really difficult to get to the pull cord system. And so we've actually, Sherry has come up with a couple of different ways. One of the things that was mentioned on the previous slide is Life Alert, which is a system that they can actually wear a little pendant on their, around their neck, and they can get help. Another system that Sherry has been able to implement is a cell phone. So if you have a cell phone that's charged up, you can dial 911 for, and get help at any time, even if they do not have a plan. And the third system that we've come up with is this Good Neighbor system. And essentially, again, this is something that can be run whether you have resident services or not. The residents basically have some kind of notification system. So they'll come out their door and they'll turn a placard from red to green. And they do that by 10 or 11 o'clock each day. And then we have a volunteer, whether it's a resident or some other party, that will just walk through the halls and make sure that everyone has turned their placard over so that we all know that they've been outside, that they're active, and that everything is okay. Now, clearly, not everybody wants to participate in that, and so we just have a understanding that if you don't want to, then you can opt out of that. But it has been instrumental in helping us find people that need assistance in a quicker manner than the pull cord or Life Alert or any of the different methods that we have. So we would certainly recommend it. It's low cost and it's easy to do, and everyone kind of enjoys checking on their neighbor. If you could advance the slide. Sherry?
So when identifying unsafe situations, property management must be able to identify these as they arise with our senior residents, like concerning sudden changes in their mental health. As we age, our minds and our body go through many changes, and seniors face additional physical, mental, and emotional changes as well as life changes. You need to be aware of these, and some of the signs that you might see would alert you to something that could be wrong, like when emotions or behaviors seem to interfere with the senior's relationships, a change in their daily activities, inability to make decisions, or just the general quality of their life changes. If things like this happen, it may be time for your resident to seek some help. Warning signs, according to the Community of Mental Health Centers, may include some of the following: agitation, anxiety, depression, breaking their medical regimens by not taking their medications or even over-medicating, when they cut back on their social interaction, self-care and grooming, like possibly forgetting to even get dressed, feelings of hopelessness, sleep disturbances, and thoughts of suicide. If you, your staff, or their neighbors, see any of these behaviors or emotional changes in a senior on your property, you may need to contact their case manager or their emergency contact, because this could be a more serious underlying health issue, such as Alzheimer's or dementia. Advance the slide, please. When you have determined that you're going to have to make that call to either their emergency contact number or which could be a family member, I suggest that the managers sit down and make some notes prior to the call, because it can be a difficult call to make. Write down the details accurately with dates and times that you've observed different behaviors and what those behaviors are. And also first make sure that you checked the emergency contact information from the resident's file to see what type of contact that you can make and what kind of information you can provide on their behalf. Then when making that difficult call, take a personal approach, yet be professional when speaking with the emergency contact. You'll be able to disclose more information to a case manager or a close family member, such as an adult child, than you would a family friend or a distant relative. I would start out the conversation by saying, you know, I'm concerned about your mom. She doesn't seem to be herself lately. This is some of the behaviors I've noticed in the past few days. And then, you know, describe those behaviors. And I would ask the emergency contact if they could come by and check on them and find out when they're able to do that, and then make sure that you do have them report back to you. Now, if the resident has opted out and they do not list or want you to contact an emergency contact, this might be the time you have to call Adult Protection Services. If the resident's in danger or in a serious situation, call 911. But when you do have to contact an Adult Protection Services, you can find your local Adult Protection Services online with detailed instructions on how to call in the incident to their hotline or even file it online. I do encourage you to gather this information now before for any emergency arises, and have that on hand. In most cases, Adult Protection Services will respond within 24 hours as their maximum time. If they deem so, by the information that you've provided to them, they'll call out emergency medical responders immediately if they feel that your resident is in danger. Depending on what they've determined, after they've contacted the resident, they can assist the resident in home health providers or medical agencies, whatever that they determine is necessary to take the resident out of dangers. And sometimes, in extreme cases, they may remove the resident from their home until the situation is safe for them. If you need to call in several times, they do hold those files, but they just are not going to give you too much information. They will report back to you, and they'll let you know that they've made contact with the resident, and they may or may not let you know if they were able to contact family. But again, they won't provide you with any other information. But you can rest assured that they will make sure that your resident is safe. Next slide, please. Okay, I'd like to touch on if you have a property that has mixed age communities, and just a couple of activities that you can set up for your seniors and youth. And we have several programs set up to get our seniors and youth interacting with each other. And one of these programs is our Seniors Taught Reading Program. And this is where our seniors interact with preschool to kindergarten age children by spending time reading to them. And you can also set up an after-school program where seniors can assist elementary age children with homework, reading, and playing games. And they can even do arts and crafts with them. The seniors and the children seem to really enjoy these activities together. After another great program that we had started at one of our mixed communities was the mentoring program. And this was linking seniors to teens. Seniors have a wealth of knowledge and so much experience to share, like previous jobs that they've held and how to conduct yourself as a valuable employee, writing resumes, and even how to start looking at creating their own businesses. This program gives the seniors a sense of worth, passes on priceless knowledge and experiences to the teens, and really most importantly, it creates lifelong relationships. Many of our services that we've already discussed today can be successfully implemented on a mixed age community and addresses the need of age, such as our food pantry, exercise program, community and social events, and the Good Neighbor program. And you can advance the slide, please.
Okay, well, thank you all for attending. I know we just have a few minutes left in our webinar, so I'm not sure, Reagan, how you want to handle the question and answer part.
Yeah, so at this point, if anyone has a question, you can unmute your phone and ask Jennifer, Shane, or Sherry. So also, you can also use the chat feature as well if you have any questions. And we'll give everyone maybe a minute or two if they want to try and write down a question. Well, it doesn't look like anyone has any questions, so we will continue with just the conclusion of it's been a terrific presentation. I know that we had a great panel of speakers with Jennifer, Shane, and Sherry, so we're so grateful for your partnership with Mercy Housing. Thank you everyone else for joining us on the webinar today. We will have all this material on our website, so that it will be in our resource link page. So that way the PowerPoint, as well as Jennifer, Shane, and Sherry also sends us some additional resources that you guys can use as well. So thank you again, and this concludes the webinar, and you can now disconnect.